Previously, we discussed the teaching of the 7 Gentile times, an interpretation that links the 7 times of Daniel chapter 4 with the times of the Gentiles mentioned in Luke chapter 21 verse 24. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a tree that gets chopped down and then after 7 times is allowed to grow is said to have an application far beyond Nebuchadnezzar. It is said to have a second, greater application in regard to the kingdom of God. The tree is said to be God's earthly kingdom of Judah, which was destroyed by the Babylonians. 7 times of 2,520 years are said to pass when God has no kingdom to represent his rulership, and the Gentile powers rule unchecked. Then after 7 times, God sets up a new kingdom in heaven, with Jesus Christ as king. The destruction of Judah is said to occur in the year 607 BC. Adding 2,520 years, the 7 times brings us to 1914. Thus 1914 is when Jesus is said to become king. As we previously seen, this interpretation is contingent on many factors. Disprove any one of these factors and the entire teaching falls like a house of cards. Some of these factors are leaps of interpretation and hard to prove or disprove. Since many of these claims are not falsifiable, we could almost file some of these as not even wrong. However, not all the claims are beyond verification. One of the factors that the Gentile Times equation hinges upon is the year Jerusalem was destroyed. If Jerusalem was not destroyed in 607 BC, the input to the Gentile Times calculation, then the year 1914 cannot be derived. In the 30-part series, When Jerusalem Was Destroyed, the subject of 607 BC was dissected in depth. Therefore, there is little need to go into great detail here. A link to the series will be placed in the About section to this video. However, this is a brief synopsis. Both the biblical and extra-biblical evidence inescapably points to 587 BC and not 607 BC as the year Jerusalem was destroyed. 607 BC is derived from taking the year the Jews are said to have returned to Jerusalem, set at 537 BC, and subtracting 70 years that are said to be the time Jerusalem was desolated and the nation in exile. However, when one reads Ezra, it seems the date that the Jews returned better fits 538 BC and not 537 BC. Also, when one reads Jeremiah chapters 25 to 29, one gets the proper understanding of the 70 years, which were the period of Babylonian domination, not the period of exile, or the period Jerusalem was desolated. Jeremiah chapter 25 verse 12 shows that the end of the 70 years would occur when Babylon was punished, which happened when it was overthrown in 539 BC, and not when the exiles returned. The exiles could not start to return until the 70 years first had elapsed. By examining the books of Haggai and Zechariah, we can find that the timing favors 587 BC over 607 BC. Jerusalem was destroyed in Nebuchadnezzar's 18th year. When one looks at the astronomical diaries, they lock Nebuchadnezzar's reign into place. For instance, BAT 4956 contains dozens of planetary and lunar observations that pin down his 37th year of rule to 568 BC. Other astronomical diaries, such as the various lunar eclipse tablets, fix dozens of other dates during his reign. Thousands of economic and administrative tablets that are time-stamped with the month, day, and year of the ruling monarch enable us not only to name each of the Neo-Babylonian kings, but determine with certainty how long each ruled. The Agibbi banking tablets, the Atagapi stele, and the Hilla stele not only confirm this picture, but leave no room for any supposed gaps between kings. 587 BC is a slam-dunk case. Not a Assyriologist or an archaeoastronomer or any other unbiased expert can be produced that endorses 607 BC. All point to the year 587-586 BC. Check any reference work. There is just no question or the slightest uncertainty about the matter. Without 607 BC, the entire Gentile Times equation is thrown into disarray. There can be no 1914. But it's a simpler matter than 607. When did Jesus become king? Matthew 28:18 says, Jesus approached and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given me in heaven and on earth. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 20 says, which he, God, exercised toward Christ when he raised him up from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly places, far above every government and authority and power and lordship and every name that is named, not only in this system of things, but also in that is to come. If Jesus received all authority upon his resurrection, far above every government and power, what more authority could he have received in 1914 or at any other time? Quite simply, Jesus ruled in his kingdom from his ascension to heaven onward. What then did Jesus mean at Luke chapter 21 verse 24 about Jerusalem being trodden by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles were fulfilled? Did Jesus mean that Jerusalem had been trodden by the Gentiles since the time of Nebuchadnezzar? Well, did you know that the Jews had cast off Gentile domination completely in 110 BC and ruled autonomously until Rome conquered them again in 63 BC? So it is simply not true that the Jews had been under Gentile domination since Jerusalem's destruction by Babylon. What then did Jesus mean? By looking at the context, he is speaking of the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. There are several views on this. To name a couple, some believe that the times of the Gentiles started in that year and continue into the indefinite future. Another viewpoint is that the trampling of Jerusalem referred to the Roman trampling of that city, and that the Romans trampled it until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. That is, when in 70, Jerusalem was destroyed and there was nothing left to trample. Therefore, in review, Jerusalem was not destroyed in 607 BC, but 587 BC. Jesus became king after his resurrection, when he was given all power and authority in heaven and on earth. The Jews did not experience an uninterrupted period of Gentile domination from the time of Nebuchadnezzar onward. They had a brief period of casting Gentile domination aside. In the context of Luke 21, the times of the Gentiles have reference to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by the Romans, not the destruction by the Babylonians 6 centuries earlier. Thus, there is no evidence that Luke chapter 21 verse 24 has anything in common to the 7 times of Daniel chapter 4. In terms of the 7 times of Daniel 4, could it not simply just have applied to Nebuchadnezzar and him alone?